We have this. That's good. He's never coming back.
My one and only appearance.
Can you just like tap on my shoulder?
It's me, you. Okay. We just rotate.
Yes. Do I just hold on to this the whole time, or would I tap it?
Oh.
Okay.
Yes.
That makes
Got
sense.
it.
Okay, who's saying the intro?
You are.
Hello! Welcome back to our podcast. What's it called again? Behind the lectern. CS lectern, because there's already a behind the lectern. We don't want to get sued, as you know. Thank you. Today we have the amazing Anshul.
Hello. Testing.
His first and last time coming. I don't think he's coming back. Okay, I'll pass it off to Chrissy.
I mean, we've already done introductions for us, so why don't we go ahead and introduce you? So this is Anshul, as Audrey mentioned. If you want to introduce yourself, like what? I don't know.
Sure. Yeah, my name is Anshul Shah. I'm a fourth-year PhD candidate at UC San Diego in the Computer Science Education Lab. I'll leave it at that for now, but I hope that's good enough for an intro.
Yeah. That's awesome. Thank you. So, do you want to do our icebreaker thing?
Sure.
Okay.
No, please,
Okay.
no.
The first thing, we want to know how many unread emails you have.
Whoa, that's a good one. Okay. Oh man, let's see. Is this for my UCSD account or my personal account?
Yeah, you could go with UCSD.
Yeah, let's do UCSD account. Hold on. It says 99 plus. Let's see. Okay, the total thing on the account is 17,000.
Oh!
I think a lot of those are also my personal one. Do you know if there's a way to like isolate?
Probably like the number on the side. Like if you go on.
Yeah, this one just says 99 plus.
Okay.
Maybe I should have had my laptop, but
no, it's okay.
I would guess.
It's okay.
I think a lot though. It starts to get a lot of emails. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So we'll go on to our first part, Q&A. So the first question we have for you is, I know you came from Duke, right? So if you want to talk about like your experience at Duke versus UCSD and how the transition was, especially from BSN to PhD as well.
Yeah. So one interesting thing at Duke that I think helps a lot of like first year undergrad students is you don't actually apply for a major going into the school. So you just apply for like either the School of Engineering or like letter or arts and sciences or something, like just like the general one. And so computer science is in that one. But when I like applied to college, I thought I wanted to be a lawyer, and so like my first year I took like political science and like economics classes. But then I took the intro computer science class with Professor Stephens Martinez. She also has a huge podcast in CS education, so maybe y'all can even like sync up. Collaborating. No, she's super nice. I'm sure it would be more collaboration than competition. But I took the intro CS class with her, and I was like, wow, this is such a great field to like. I felt like I could just create things that I wanted, and it was also just like solving fun little math puzzles, in the intro computer science class. So I just loved that. I really enjoyed the experience. And then I just declared my major as computer science after taking like one more, like the second computer science class in like the intro series. So yeah, it was great. So like the interesting thing is Duke is also a private school. So this is a big difference between UC San Diego and Duke, is that the computer science departments are so different in terms of the like core staff to student ratio. There we would have, like I remember I was also like a tutor, TA for the intro class like every single semester basically for the last 3 years of my undergrad experience. And so I remember like office hour nights, it would be like me and like 3 or 4 other TAs just like hanging out, like for 2 hours during our shift, and maybe a few students would come in for help, but it was just like, at any given time, like 1 to 2 tutors would be busy, because it was maybe, like 25 to 30 tutors for a 150 to 200 person class. Yeah, it's crazy, right? It's like so different from what we have here. So yeah, that's one of the main differences. And then when I came here, I feel like I really appreciate the struggle of like large public universities to deal with the scale that we deal with here. And so yeah, I really enjoy that part of like being at a UC. And so I think it's also a really important challenge in like computing education research to do what we do, but also make sure it's like accessible to a bunch of people. So yeah, hopefully, yeah, that captures kind of the main difference between Duke and UCSD.
So you went from like taking. Oh, thank you. So you went from like interested in like becoming a lawyer to then CS class, and then
Yeah.
you were like, "Whoa, I like this."
Yeah.
So then you mentioned like you like the us trying to figure out in public school setting like how do we navigate that. But then what was like I guess the pivotal like the point where you're like education like the research side would be what I'm
Yeah,
interested
great
in.
question. So, since I was a TA or tutor, we call them like undergrad TAs at Duke. So that's why here it's different, like meaning. But I did that with the intro computer science class every year, and Professor KSM is like the main teacher for that class, the main instructor of that class. And so by working with her as like a course staff member for so long, she also does research in computing education. And so I just naturally started working with her. We made some quizzing app called the CS101 Reviewer app. It was just like a quizzing tool that students could use to answer like code tracing questions. So we made that and then just collected some data over its use, and I submitted something to this random conference that I had no idea on. It was called the like IDICE conference. It's some conference that happens in Europe. But at the time, I was just like, "What? This is so random. Like, I'll just take Professor KSM's word for it. I'll just write up this experience report, like whatever that means, and submit it to this conference." And then it turned out I just really enjoyed doing research in this space, and then she's like, "Oh, have you considered grad school for this?" And I was like, "Wow, I didn't know you could do grad school for this." And then I applied to quite a few places, and then fortunately got into UCSD, and then the rest was history. But yeah, it's mainly from working with Professor KSM, and I just also I'm very interested in education research. Like some of the most influential people I feel throughout my first 25 years of life have been teachers and professors and stuff like that. So I've always cared a lot about doing this kind of work, whether it was research or teaching itself. It's yeah, pretty interesting and enjoyable for me.
I love that. So what is like your most interesting project or your favorite project? Undergrad and grad experience so
Yeah.
far.
Oh, for one for each, basically.
Or like
oh, overall, yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's a great question. I think the most fun one. So, man, there's so much I would want to say. So I'll separate interesting in terms of maybe like the deep research question versus like a fun project. Because one thing is I really enjoy more like abstract theories of like learning and like how humans make decisions, and then applying that to some very specific case. So like Thomas and I had done some work about like how students explore code and comprehend code in a large code base. And I just liked that project from an academic perspective because we found this really interesting theory called information foraging theory. And I just had a really good time doing that kind of project. But the more interesting story for like a podcast format is I had done this one project where we were interested in like students' engagement levels during a lecture. Okay. And so we were like, okay, typically people use like surveys and stuff to measure engagement. They'll ask a survey in the middle of lecture, like, oh, is things too fast, too slow? How easy is it to note take? Things like this. But the issue is this is all self-reported data, and there might also be some bias to be like, oh yeah, I was taking notes, or like, of course I was paying attention, like I listened to everything the professor says, right? So then I found this one study where they literally have humans on the research team sit in a large lecture and just watch the students around them, and they have some a rubric basically where every 8 to 10 minutes while you're sitting among students. And by the way, you have to pretend to be a student. You really can't give away that you're a researcher. Every 8 to 10 minutes, you observe the students around you, and you just see where are their eyes, what are they listening to, and what are they doing. And we record whether they're engaged or not engaged, basically. And so we it was just a fun experience to sit among like first year students in Gerald's like CSE 11 class. I listened to him because it was like 2 lectures on Tuesday and 2 lectures on Thursday, and I sat in both of those the whole quarter. So it was like 6 hours Tuesday, 6 hours Thursday. So I was like 12 hours a week. No, sorry, 3 hours, 6 hours a week, right? 3 hours a lecture, twice a week. And then I did that all 10 weeks, and so we recorded like throughout every lecture how engaged were students while Gerald was doing morning announcements and then doing live coding and then active live coding. So I got to see all these fun games like kids these days are playing, and like there was like so many funny moments throughout the quarter. Like one time in class there was like I don't know if y'all know the game like Clash of Clans, if you are, but it has this very iconic like startup noise or something like that. And one time it was like quiet, Joel was lecturing, and then that noise happened. Then everybody in like a 20 student radius like starts laughing. Another kid was just like straight up watching like a soccer game in class, at like 9:30 in the morning. And then I saw all the games, like 2048 is apparently really popular. There's some little extension that you can have, and you just click the top right of your Mac, and then you start playing 2048. So that was just really fun. I think that was one of the more interesting projects that let me get a lot of insight into what first years are doing in computer science classes.
What do you think you like learned about teaching through like that experience and watching Gerald teach like 6 hours?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. I think so. What I learned from, well, first of all, I think watching Gerald lecture is just, I really, really respect him as an instructor. I think he's one of the best like lecturers I've ever seen, and I think part of the reason I and like other students like him a lot is he's very like enthusiastic and engaging, and that's actually a big reason why I even like came into computer science. I feel like when you're a first time computer science student, the instructor makes such a big impact on like messaging for the whole field, kind of. If it's just some boring lecture with like static code examples and the instructor is just like reading off maybe or annotating stuff, it's like, okay, fine, this is kind of cool. But then if you have some enthusiasm and some fun like way of lecturing and messaging the content, I think that makes a big difference. And that's what helped me be drawn to the field. But I also think like one concrete takeaway is that it's really hard to engage students for 80 minutes in a lecture. Like one of the, like, to get into the findings of that, like we see a huge drop in engagement from like, at the beginning, 90%, 99% almost are engaged at the start, right? And you can see it slowly creep down to like maybe like 50 to 60% halfway through the lecture. But the experiment that quarter was to like have a moment where students actually like code on their own and then talk to their partners next to them. We would see this big spike during that part because we were like, you have to do this for a grade, so you better do it. So that's why we get like 100% participation for that. But then after that, like we still saw persistent like high engagement for about 20 minutes, which was really a cool takeaway for me to be like, okay, if you just have some of these more interactive moments, just like distributed maybe 2 or 3 times throughout a lecture, it does a lot for this like persistent engagement. And also from a teaching perspective, like it's hard to talk and lecture for 80 minutes if you have moments where the students are doing it and are talking to themselves, and there's so much evidence showing that when they talk and discuss, they like learn more as well. So I think it's just a win-win for students and instructors to have that kind of stuff, that kind of like lecture format. Yeah.
What advice would you have for people who are wanting to get into CSED research and like, I don't know, maybe like pursue a PhD in CSED?
Yeah, great question. That's a highly relevant question. Yeah, so I think, gosh, there's like so many aspects of the advice. Even like there's like the academic advice, like how do you be a good like researcher, but then also the life advice of like what it means to be going into a PhD and doing something in computer science education. So I don't know, there's like so much advice to honestly give, and for like all of y'all, please reach out when moments of these things happen. I feel like there's so much to learn just from talking to older grad students, and so like don't hesitate to ask those questions. I'll just give maybe one of each. So like for academic like advice, I think one of the best things for doing good research is reading a lot of papers in the field that you're working in or just like interested in, having more just like not of a knowledge base to draw upon, and like then you have ideas that you talk about during meetings and stuff like that. Like those, like having that, doing that reading, I think is really important. it's not just reading. It can be done through like talking with other people that have done research and similar things. Then you hear what things they've been reading or the studies they've been doing. Like so much of research I think is just like consuming knowledge and discussing knowledge. I think that's like the because I don't think like a great researcher doesn't just like come to a meeting and have a great idea in the meeting and then it's like, okay, now we're gonna do this. Like it's really like it takes months or years to like form a effective line of research, and that's done through reading and talking and just having more of it like experience with whatever material it is that you're researching. And then life advice, like a PhD is like really hard. I think there's like the way I describe it is it can be like a roller coaster over the anywhere between like 4 and 6 or 7 years that you're doing a PhD. Like there's times where like maybe you're having a great time, the research project is so fun, you're making progress, you're doing cool analysis, you maybe get a paper in and get to travel somewhere. Those are like such awesome feelings, in a PhD, especially the travel thing. Like now I'm like, okay, I want to go to this place in the world and there's a conference there, like let me see if I can like make something happen here. But there's also like a lot of moments of like uncertainty because a PhD is a very somewhat like individual pursuit where you're working on your project and you're the one who cares the most about how your work goes. Like your advisor cares about you and your work, but it's like you have to take ownership of that project and of this line of work and make it what it can be. It's very different from like a lot of my friends work in industry and they're like working on a team, they have like a manager, they have like if you're in like a tech company or something, you have your own team, you might have an adjacent team that's doing all the testing for your like code and stuff. Like it's a highly collaborative space and you are typically in meetings and talking to people. Here you do have a lot of meetings and stuff as well, but it's much more like you have to figure out what to do and make it happen. And with that comes a lot of uncertainty and moments of like, what am I really doing? Like, is this going to work out? Like, do I want to do this? Like those things are just like feelings that are, I think, very natural for PhD students to have, especially like in the beginning. I'm happy to get more into this because I, went through it and fortunately like it didn't make me drop the PhD, but like that's a totally natural thing to happen to people. So yeah, I would give that as like just be reassured that some of those feelings of uncertainty and stuff can definitely happen, but talk to your advisor, talk to older graduate students like me, and so those things like are some ways to sort of overcome those moments of uncertainty if they happen.
And I know you mentioned like talking to grad students, right? So I guess for undergrads, right, who are not necessarily involved in research like or programs like ERSP or something, right? Like how do they make that connection? Like how do they go out and reach out to someone?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I feel sorry, Andre. I feel like one of the easiest ways to do that is just like show up and be around. So like we have the CER seminar that happens every Monday at like 2 p.m. In the 4th floor of the CS building, CSE 4140, 4140, yeah. Email me, Audria, so we can add you to the mailing list. But that happens weekly, and it's all the main people that work in our lab or do CS Ed research in the department. There's only like, I don't know, 20 people that show up, 20 to 30 people that show up like in person and on Zoom combined. And I can recognize like all the faces that show up there and when I see them around the department and stuff like that, and then it's very easy to just come up to like me after one of those meetings and just like talk to me and be like, oh, hey, like, what are you working on? Is there any opportunity here? Like, this is my name. Like, this is what I'm interested in. And I don't know. I think just like letting people know that you're interested in this and showing up and, being committed to it is like a great way. And yeah. I think that's like maybe something that undergrads could do to be more actively involved in like the CS Ed lab or research with any of the professors.
All right, that's awesome. That's really good. Because one of the things that I did was actually Gerald. Like so I took his class in spring, CSE 15R, and I went to his office hours to ask about ERS because I saw he was one of the professors that did it, right? So I guess what advice for others is also just like going to office hours or like TA office hours and stuff as well. But I guess going back to like TAing and stuff, and also just like how you were mentioning like the research, like you were sitting with the students and pretending to be a student doing the research, right, for CSE 11. So I know like you TA'd for CSE 11, and then you've also been like an instructor on record, and you've been a TA for like operative class like CSE 190. For those who don't know, it's like large code bases. So if you want to talk about like the difference between TAing like undergrad, like lower divs versus upper div, and also like the difference between a TA versus instructor on record.
Yeah. Oh wow. Yeah. What a loaded question.
It is
So much to
loaded,
get
I'm
into
sorry.
there. No, that's
Like-
fine. That's fine. I love to talk. Keep going. But okay. So one big difference. Let's start with like the like first years versus like upper division. There's definitely a big difference where it's like one is like the reasons for taking the class. So in an intro class, like at UCSD, we have like so many different types of people, like maybe so many that are not even majors in computer science, and they're either like there for a general requirement, they're just there for the vibes, it sounds interesting, something like that. Or there's people that are like, I'm gonna take these kinds of classes for 3 years and get the highest grades and graduate and stuff. So that is very interesting because you have such a big mix of like motivations for taking the class. And as an instructor, like most instructors, they want to like maybe appease everybody and give something for everyone to be happy, but that's really hard to do in an intro CS class, just because there's so many different types of people. So that's like, I guess, a challenge of teaching like the lower division classes, aside from also just how many people there are. And like, I'm in a class of like TAing a class of 100 people for the large code bases thing, and there, even in that 100 people, there's like, oh, I have an issue with this, like course technology, can you just fix this for me? And that's already feels like a lot. But then when it's 600 people that are like working on coding for the first time, it's like there's so many things happening with those students. But then with upper division classes, it's interesting because students are typically like highly motivated, I feel, if they've gotten to the 3rd or 4th year of their computer science curriculum, and they're typically taking the class out of interest, and so that is like, I really enjoy like the office hours, especially in upper division classes, because you have people typically that are like coming there and maybe have like finished the project but just want to like discuss like other ways that they could have done it, or just show some cool things that they found about the code base or about some comprehension techniques that they might have seen or used. And so those are really fun because it doesn't feel like, oh, they're just at office hours because they need to finish the project, but maybe they're also kind of like interested in the material. And then you said the difference between TA and instructor, right? Huge difference. Like I feel like I was so used to TAing and tutoring for so long. There's always like when you're doing it, when you're a TA or tutor, there's always like, okay, there's like the buck stopped with somebody else. It's like with this class in CSE 190 this quarter, Gerald is like the instructor of record, and I'm like helping out in lectures and doing some of the stuff. But it's like I know Gerald at the end of the day is like the last person that'll make the final call for big decisions. But when you're instructor of record, like all of that comes to you. Like every small thing, you need to make sure like you've thought about it and can like justify it. And that's a pretty big like change in responsibility. And I'll say the biggest thing is just like as an instructor of record, you have to basically like manage people really well. Ideally, you manage people so well that you're not feeling like you have to do everything for everything. You can give students the space to like take independence and control over whatever part of the course that they're assigned for, like if it's assignments or labs or discussion. Like you just want to really promote the space for the students, like the TAs and tutors, to like do a lot of like good work on their own, basically. So that's a big like difference between TA and instructor of record. Yeah, great questions.
So, how do you balance your personal life, research, and teaching? Because it's more like independent, like more free time, but it's more like if you're disciplined, you're good. But if you're not,
Yeah.
you're cooking.
Gosh,
You're cooked.
Yeah, that's like that's another great advice for like doing a PhD. What I say is like you get out what you put in. Like there's nobody looking over your shoulder every week and it's like do this, or like how every day at like a software company you'd have to give a stand up or something like that. There is like nobody checking like what I do in a certain week, and it's very easy for that to like get to you and make slow progress. So like now it's easy for me to say this because like I've I think I'm happy with the progress I've made in my PhD. But my first year, I feel like I was doing nothing. Like I got really into surfing my first year. I was just going to the beach for like 3 hours, surfing, coming home, taking it easy, cooking a nice meal, like watching TV, and then it was just like hanging out with friends and stuff like that. So I was just like really coasting my first year and not doing too much like research wise that I probably should have. So like how do I balance it? I feel like now I'm like my life is settled down a little bit more where I'm not so I don't know, like on the go and stuff like that. I'm not really sure. I think like you get a lot of control over your own schedule. So after a couple years, you sort of figure out like what is the schedule that works for me and what do I want to stick to. So like for me, I can't work from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. I go surfing in the mornings usually, and because the sun is out, the waves are better in the morning and stuff like that. And then that might mean like sometimes in the evenings or later at night, I'll wrap up some work. So like I get to distribute the work kind of how I want in a day to make it kind of work for me. And so yeah, that's just sort of how I've been able to do it. But I like yeah, I don't know. I think it's very personalized for everybody. I would just say try to find like a hobby or like something that's like a really good separation from school and work and stuff like that. And then like a good group of friends, like social support is like so important. So whether that's friends in the department or just like outside of school and work and that are just like in the city that you live in, I think those things are like so like invaluable that they're worth like spending a lot of time in your first year, like making sure you set up like your social support and finding hobbies and stuff like that. Yeah.
No, that's great to hear. Cause some weeks I feel like I'm cooking, other weeks I'm cooked. I'm like, how? But I think hearing your experience, like your first year, like you were vibing. You were still getting work done, but it was like definitely like I'm like, okay, well, I have.
Yeah.
Anshul said I can, so
Yeah.
you understand what you.
Yeah, yeah.
I hope my first year is chill.
Okay.
That'd be kind of nice. Yeah. So with that, like, what do you think was your biggest challenge or struggle that you sort of faced during your PhD so far?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Biggest challenge or struggle? I feel, oh man, I think I'm lucky in that I haven't faced too much like really difficult things. I've had a great relationship with my advisor. I think that's typically one of the main things that could be like hard on a PhD student, but like y'all all know Gerald, like he's just I think he's just such a lovely person. I'm just such a fan of Gerald. So that's been like really great. I feel like I owe a lot of like the work I've been able to do and opportunities I've been able to get from Gerald. And so but I guess one of the main challenges, okay, here's a good one. Like I think at the beginning, maybe like my second year of my PhD, I was like in this like phase where I would see, like fourth and fifth year grad students that I like really looked up to. And I was like, oh damn, like they've done all these different things. They've like published all these papers, taught all this stuff, like gotten all these fellowships and stuff like that. And I was like, oh my God, like, am I gonna do any of this? Can I even do like one of these things? And this is like eventually I want to get a job, right? So I'm like, am I gonna be able to get a job with like what I've done? Like all of these things are so it goes back to the point of it being like an individual field, because it's really hard to like compare yourself to another PhD student because you work in a completely different space. Like there's different opportunities that are available to different subfields and stuff like that. So it's very easy to like just compare and be like, oh my God, am I good enough? It's kind of like imposter phenomenon or like sense of belonging. Like these are such natural feelings to have, especially in like a highly individual and uncertain space like doing a PhD. And so I think in my end of my second year, middle of my second year, I was having these doubts. And I was like, I really want like these kinds of jobs when I graduate my PhD. Like what can I do to get there? And I was telling Gerald this, so it goes back to like having a good advisor. Like I was able to like tell Gerald this during a one-on-one meeting and like share like this is how I'm feeling about it. This is like what I'm doing. I feel like it's making me less productive because I'm worrying about these like big picture things and I'm not focused on the day to day. I mean, he gave some really good advice. He was like, "Oh yeah, I've been through something very similar as well in his PhD." And what he sort of said that really stuck with me was like, it's so easy to have like fears about what's going to happen in like 3 years or 5 years, or be like, by this time will I be quote unquote good enough or whatever. But worrying about those things is not going to get you to where you want to be in 3 to 5 years. The way to do that is focusing on the day-to-day things and like making sure you do the best that you can in the small picture, right? And then those things sort of build up. um, and that really helped me be like, okay, yeah, like if I want to, get X, Y, and G opportunities, or X, Y, and Z opportunities and jobs are really random, like variable there. I don't know why I said G. Yeah. But yeah, it was just like, stop worrying about these big picture things and just focus on what you can control. And that really helps with like the mental aspect of doing a PhD. Definitely.
I think it's really good advice, because it's so easy to like get in your head and think too far ahead when you should be really focus on what you can do today and what you can do now.
Yeah,
But thinking a little bit ahead, right? So in the future, if I'm not mistaken, you want to be a professor, right?
that's true. Yeah.
What do you think your teaching philosophy would be as a professor, or like what do you
Awesome,
think you
nice.
would like sort of bring to the classes that you teach?
Yeah, great question. So, a lot of my teaching philosophy is based on the research I've done, and then the like instructors that I've seen that I really respect. So, from like a research perspective, there's this awesome learning theory, teaching and learning theory called cognitive apprenticeship. Okay, I think it's like one of the coolest things ever. And let me give the quick like 1 minute spiel on why I think it makes so much sense. It's like the oldest way that knowledge transfer happened among humans was like through the apprenticeship model. Like, this is the name for it. When somebody wanted to be like a blacksmith, or somebody wanted to be a carpenter, or whatever the like job was, think like 2,000, 3,000 years ago, they would work closely with the person in the town that like did that work, and they would be an apprentice of that like expert, and would watch them, would do some small things to help out in the process. And then eventually they would, get more and more responsibility, and then take over and be like the expert now, right? So that's the traditional apprenticeship model, and it's really easy to do that when people are learning stuff like trades and more like observation-based tasks, right? Like carpentry and blacksmithing, which I said. But then we started having these things called like schools, right? And these were more like formal and like abstract ways of teaching stuff. So now, like, everybody asks that question in high school. It's like, oh, when am I going to learn this in the real world? Like when they're taking an algebra 1 class, and like, oh, why do I need to do like X, Y, and Z? Like, why do why, like, what is a derivative? Like, why is that ever going to be useful? But like, the point of schools is not for us to teach like things that they're directly going to do, but we have to teach some of these higher order skills, like being able to do basic reading and reading comprehension, writing things, whether that's essays, or like later on you're just going to have to be able to read some news article in the world, critically think about it, and maybe like verbalize or write some opinion about it. Same thing with like mathematical problem solving. I just think like logic is just a very important skill that people should have, right? And so let me get back to the learning theory of like cognitive apprenticeship. The goal of it is to bring that like traditional apprenticeship model to these like things like reading and writing or programming. And so at a high level, it's like you want to model what an expert does when they're working on a task. Press the button. Should I wait for it to stop? Okay. Okay, thank you. So first, like, the instructor models like how to do a task, and then they give like smaller that gets to like bigger tasks for the learner to do on their own. You want to encourage the learner to like articulate their thinking and reflect on their learning process. So there's this whole like way that cognitive apprenticeship outlines like what are some good things for an instructor to do. But what that actually looks like is I use a lot of like demonstrations where I'm like verbalizing my thought process to students. And then there's a lot of moments where students are working on things at first by themselves, and then discussing it with their partners, and then sharing out to the class. And I think to like tie this all together, I think active learning and like collaborative learning are like two things that I like really believe in when I'm teaching my class. So I want them to learn by doing, and I want them to like do things together. Basically, I think it helps keep the class engaging. And another way I like to do that is just by being enthusiastic. I like playing geography games at the beginning of my classes if I have the time. And so just some of those things to keep the class fun and social and hopefully also like educational.
You led me right to the next question. Actually, you
Perfect.
mentioned geography, right? So
Yeah.
we're gonna move on to a bit more personal type questions
Okay,
now,
cool.
if that's okay.
Yeah.
So I know you love geography games, right? So I want to know, like, have you traveled outside of the U.S. and stuff? And like, if so, what was like your favorite place? And also, like, what would you want to go? Like, what's your dream destination?
Yeah, dang, that's a great question. I've been lucky to travel quite a bit. My parents like to travel, and so when I was like living with them when I was younger and on like family vacations, we like to go places. And then also through my PhD, I'd never gone to Europe before I traveled for like the IDICE conference that we have in computing education. So I got to go to like Finland one year for that, and then Italy one year for that. And then this year, Thomas is going in my place to the Netherlands, which I really wanted to go to, but I can't
Thomas.
go, so, yeah, dang it, Thomas. No, but I actually can't go, so it's actually very clutch that Thomas is able to go. So that's
I know
good. I don't know. Like, yeah, I have gone to some fun places. I think maybe the most fun place I've gone is I don't know. I'll just say the Italy trip that I had done for IDICE last year. It was like a solo trip, but I ended up meeting a couple people that I actually knew there just because they were from the Bay Area where I grew up and they were also there. And my friend like sent me a screenshot of his Find My and he was like, "Whoa, y'all are like a mile apart." And I was like, "Whoa!" And then I messaged the guy on Instagram because I followed him and like we just met up and it was really fun. But yeah, that was a really fun trip. And then where would I want to go now? I think now my dream vacation spot is like Bali because the surfing there is insane, and I just want to go on a surf trip for like 2 weeks and just surf for like 6 hours a day and not have any responsibilities. So that's my dream vacation, I think.
That is very cool. Wait, can you describe more about your solo trip? Do you think it's better to do a solo trip once you're in your life, or like go with friends or family?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I love traveling with my friends. Like the other option I was gonna say was just going to like a all-inclusive resort in Mexico with my like five closest undergrad friends, and that was like super fun. But it was just fun because I was with them at an all-inclusive resort, you know. So like, that is like a different kind of fun. It's just for the people. But I think I'm definitely like I enjoy being around my close friends. I prefer being with my close friends than being alone, I guess. Like I think I'm a bit more of an extrovert, if that's like what differentiates an introvert and extrovert. So I was like definitely a little nervous about doing a solo trip, but a lot of conference travel, it usually ends up being solo. You'll know people at the conference, but if you go to Europe, like which like Thomas is doing this summer, you should also like for a conference. If you're going for a conference, you should take a few days before and a few days after the conference and just hang out in Europe or wherever it is, like on your own. And so those days will definitely be solo. So I was definitely nervous about that, but I ended up there's just like so much in these like big European cities. You can just like walk outside wherever you're staying, just get on like the closest public transport thing and go somewhere. And like the American mind is like, whoa, like, this is crazy. Like
Everything's connected.
yeah, like the public transport itself, like it's like whoa, it's mind blowing. But then the architecture is so cool, the food is amazing. Like I don't know, it's really awesome to like be able to travel on somebody else's dime to just like see a part of the world that you wouldn't have gone to otherwise. So yeah, I was nervous about it, but it ended up being a really, really good time. And I was sad to leave, and now I just really want to go back with a couple of my close friends, basically.
Love that.
Yeah.
Have you ever almost drowned during one of your surfing trips, or like any crazy stories?
Yeah, definitely been like some moments that were really scary. Like, so the thing about surfing is like how do I describe this? Like, at the beginning, you don't realize how scary waves and water can be. Like it's kind of fun to play in the beach and the white water, and you jump into the waves and stuff like that. But then, like when you actually have to like paddle all the way out to where the waves are breaking, and sometimes they crash like on your head. There's this new experience I didn't even know is possible when I started surfing. Is like you get what they call is like being put in the washing machine, basically, where you like when the wave comes like this, you are part of that wave that just you get thrown up in the air and then down, and then there's this whole like vortex or whatever cycle where the water just keeps pushing you down. So even it's not like you're just like in the water underwater, you're underwater and there's more things like pushing you down, you know. And so what you learn is like at the when the first few times that happens, you're so scared and you're freaking out, right? And then when you're freaking out, your heart rate goes faster. You have less time that you can survive underwater if your heart rate is fast, right? So what you have to learn is you literally just like you relax and just like lay out and don't even fight it. You know, you accept that it's happening for the next like 7 seconds, which is actually such a long time. Like if you think about like it doesn't sound like that much, but if you're like you don't know when this is gonna end and you're underwater, 7 seconds is like really scary. So then what it teaches you is you just relax, you let it happen, and then you know by relaxing and not having your heart rate go up, you're able to find the bottom and then push yourself up. But that happens every now and then. But then there's also cool things that happen where like dolphins swimming in the wave right to you, you know, and you're like, are they gonna hit me? Like, what do I do right now? They do just move out of the way, you know, but it's so beautiful, you know. I mean, if you've ever seen those videos, you know, dolphins like right in the crest of the wave, or like random seals will just pop up like 5 feet away from you, and it gives you like a heart attack the first second. You're like, what is going on, you know? But yeah, it's just things like that are just so I just like love surfing so much, even the non like wave related like when you're catching waves, just being out in the water and nature and stuff like that. So yeah, the other scariest moment in surfing was I go to Black's Beach sometimes to surf, which is like one of the most popular spots for surfing, but it's also just a great beach. It's also a nude beach. And so one time we were seeing this person surfing naked, and I was telling my friend, like, dude, I think this guy was just naked. He's like, stop looking. But he was like doing so well too. It's like, wow, I want to watch, but I don't want to watch. Like it was crazy. But anyway, yeah. So yeah, that was not life-threatening scary, but a different type of scary.
That's a life scarring type of scary.
Yeah, definitely. Like I'm never going back. No.
Yeah. Yeah. So you grew up in the Bay Area, right on the West Coast, and then you went to Duke for your undergrad. Now you're back on the West Coast for your PhD. Do you think you have a preference between living on the West Coast versus the East Coast, and why so?
Yeah. So I also want to shout out that I was born in Texas and lived there until I was like 9 years old. I still think there's a lot of like influence from that like short 9 years of my life that I still want to claim that like I'm also like grew up a little bit in Texas. Like we still have really close friends from that. It's like a tiny town in Texas that was like very rural, like not much happens there, you know, like 12,000 people in the town. You know, like one school for each thing, you know, like just one elementary, middle, high school, like 2 pediatricians in the whole town, and those are my 2 parents, you know, like that's why like they had to go there after, you know, like getting entry into the US. So anyway, I've spent some time in like, yeah, you're right, the Texas for a little bit, and then West Coast and East Coast. Now I think I just love the West Coast the most. I would ideally like to stay here for the rest of my life, whether that's I like all the way from Seattle down to San Diego. I think it's like pretty awesome overall. But I do like Southern California the most. Part of that is because I love surfing. Part of that is I just like, so my girlfriend's family lives in Irvine. And so now that once you get to a certain age, you're like, okay, eventually I might have to live in a city my whole life, you know? And so then you start thinking of like wanting to be near parents and family and social support systems and stuff like that. So at this point, I have a lot of friends and family that are in California, so that's where I'd, you know, like to eventually be. But even aside from all that important stuff, I just love the surfing in California, so I want to stay here forever.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So now I think we're gonna transition to a bit of a activity.
Whoa,
This
fun.
is gonna be like a rapid fire question / game
No,
activity,
okay.
which we're calling push or rebase. Okay. So the premise
That's
is that
funny.
so we're going to say like a CS ed or teaching concept, right?
Okay.
And then if you think it's like a good concept or something you support, you say push.
Okay.
If it's something that you're against, you say rebase.
Okay.
And so you have to, you know, answer.
Yeah,
And then
what
you only,
kinds of topics are we talking about?
The digital footprint is gonna be
Yeah. Oh gosh.
yeah. And
Oh wait. So if I like it, I say push. If I
Yeah.
don't like it, I say rebase.
yeah,
Okay.
and then
okay.
you only get one sentence to explain afterwards.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. And I should do it quickly, right? Like, not.
Yeah.
I shouldn't think about it too much.
Yeah.
Or-
Okay.
okay,
Yeah. So
okay,
yeah,
okay,
we
okay.
can just rotate through concepts. So I'll start and then we'll just rotate. Okay. So the first one is pair programming.
Yeah, I push. I think that's a good one. I think the worry is cheating, but the fun and learning benefits outweigh the worry I have for cheating or like not pulling your weight. Yeah.
Next one is flipped classrooms.
I think rebase. I think I'm not a huge fan of that because I like lecturing to faces and seeing them nod and understand it. I think videos are not so engaging.
I agree. I dislike
Yeah.
classrooms. Okay, auto graders.
Damn, I don't know. Okay, I'll say rebase, but I do like them from a teaching perspective because it's less grading effort. But I think from a learning perspective, they don't help that much because then you just get the students that fail tests, quickly make a change, then just it's like auto grade or hacking or something is some term for it. But yeah.
Course specific AI tutors / LLMs.
I think I'm good with that. There's this really interesting. Okay, this is gonna be a slightly longer explanation. I really like. I just recently read. There's a paper from Irene Ho, I think Ho or something. She comes to the CS Ed seminar. She had written a paper about how like ChatGPT and AI tools are like decreasing social connections, like the social structure of like learning and stuff. Instead of going to friends and office hours and TAs to learn stuff, they're having more of these online interactions with like tutors. And I think as someone that cares, like I said, about collaborative learning earlier, that's one thing that worries me. But at the same time, there's been like so many other like great innovations that did probably reduce social interaction, and we've just all sort of accepted them, like phones, right? Or like social media. So like, I don't know, it's a tough one to balance because these things probably bring about learning benefits, but at what cost? So I don't know. I'll say push for now, but I'm a little worried about what it could do in the future.
Yeah, that's fair concern though. Okay, next one is peer code reviews.
You know what? We're gonna get feedback from students. So I'll let you know after that. If it's like a flop, then I will say rebase. For now, I'll say push because I think one of the tenets of cognitive apprenticeship is to compare your approach to a peer's approach and to an expert's approach. So by the peer code review process, I think students get to see like what their classmates are kind of doing, and it's a good way to learn a bit about like alternate approaches. So push, hopefully, fingers crossed.
Canvas.
Canvas, I guess push. It's a little confusing, and I think the way of uploading grades is a little annoying. With like you have to have a very specific CSV.
Yeah.
But I haven't used that many other learning management systems, so I don't even know what it's like. Competition is basically. But I guess I'll say push. It's easy enough, but it can be really annoying. Yeah.
Teaching prompt engineering as part of like a CS pedagogy.
Yeah, I think push, but I think it'll change every like few months maybe. That's one worry. Like I think like 2 years ago, people were like, "Oh yeah, prompt engineering is so important because the way that we prompt it like has a huge impact on its answer." But now I think we can give even worse prompts, and it does like a really good job even with less context. We're not decomposing the problem. So I think it is important, but I think maybe not to the same extent. Like I think it should be like integrated in classes, not like I don't know if it deserves a standalone class of like interacting with LLMs, but it's more like using LLMs as part of a broader concept like algorithms or working with large code bases or cybersecurity. I think like prompt engineering should just be a natural thing that is part of every computer science class, just like the way like following syntax or like writing clean code should be a part of everything and not its own class. Yeah.
Peer instruction.
I love it. I'm a huge fan. I also think the line of studies that Leo did for peer instruction were like made me be like, wow, computer science education is so important and so good, So big push, yeah.
Group project in CS1.
Probably rebase. I think at that stage I want to make sure that they are doing things on their own and learning all those fundamental skills. and I think pairs is the most I would be willing to do, like pair programming rather than group projects. That's a good question though. I'll say rebase for now.
And then the last one is remote instruction / asynchronous learning.
I'll say push just because I think overall it's like more accessible to people, and now like somebody can be taking my class from a different country or like 40 minutes away. But if somebody is like living on campus and they can go to class, I say go in person if the option exists. But big picture, I think remote learning, like MOOCs, like massive open online courses, just like great for society. Anything that makes information acquisition easier, I'm like a big proponent of. So yeah.
Great, yeah. Okay. Well, that sort of wraps up push or rebase.
Cool. That's a fun game. That's a great idea. Did y'all come up with the game like name and stuff, or is this like already?
It was all chat GPT.
Oh, no.
All ChatGPT.
Although
Yeah.
the topics we kind of.
Nice.
The topics we
Okay.
come up
Okay.
with.
Cool.
With
cool.
some assistance. True.
Like PCR.
Yeah.
Highly targeted.
Yeah. Just had to make sure.
Had to make sure. It was a test.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else we want to ask or do? The hot sauces.
I know we are at
We are at 4.
Oh, okay.
just in case.
Wow, time flies. I mean, I can answer a few more questions. I didn't even realize it's already been 50 minutes.
Yeah.
This has been a really fun conversation. I'll like dress a little more nicely and have like water and milk to do the hot ones next time. I didn't know any of this was happening.
Oh,
Yeah, I've heard that game sounds so fun, but I'm just the bomb, the like
Yeah.
8th one. I'm just so scared of that one.
Yeah.
I can't do it without any water or
All
milk.
the guests have like the worst reactions to that one.
Oh,
But,
really?
like,
yeah.
The
in
worst than like the 10th
hot
one.
ones. Yeah. It's crazy. I'm just curious though, so I would like to try it as maybe bring it to the lab or something.
Oh, wow.
If we're doing, maybe we could do it as a lab. Or something. It would be fun to try.
Okay, I was thinking this is so random, but I don't know if you know Thomas likes to meow. They go meow 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 meow.
Oh, the one that's in all the like reels, like the tune that's like the sad cat. Is that the one?
Can we do like a collaborative like meow? Well, what's your favorite song? We'll serenade you, but you'll be part of this.
Oh, that's a good question.
Anything is meowable.
Oh man, right now, like I think so much of my reels feed is just like cats, and it's like different like tunes of them meowing. I like the meow 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 meow.
Okay.
Like that's stuck in my head because.
You guys know the song, right? From
Y'all
Billie
know that one?
Eilish.
Oh, it's a Billie Eilish song.
Yeah.
What?
What was it made for, right?
For the Barbie movie.
Okay, I didn't watch the.
You just heard the meow one.
Yeah, I didn't watch Barbie or Oppenheimer that one summer. That's why everyone was talking about it. I felt so much like FOMO. I didn't watch either of the big movies. But anyway,
Okay, in the count of 3, okay?
I'll hold it closer to
Okay, 1, 2, 3. Meow 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 meow. Meow 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 meow. Meow 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 meow. Wait, the last part. Meow 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 meow.
I only know the chorus.
Thank you. Next time we'll do the laughing one for like Justin Bieber. It's like, wait, no. What? Haven't you seen that one?
Which one?
Like you laugh instead of meowing, you laugh. Like one person laughs, one person does a crying noise, and it's from like Justin Bieber. Which one is it? It's like
Dang.
baby, 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 but it's like what did I say it was? Yeah, it's like ha 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 ha. No, and then dang, I'll send it. I'll send it to you guys.
That's all I'm seeing.
Okay, thank you so much, Anshul. We
Of course,
appreciate
of
your
course.
time.